The night it all changed. The city felt closer than it ever had, like every streetlight was leaning in to listen. Rain glazed the asphalt, turning the road into a ribbon of trembling reflections. And somewhere between the noise of traffic and the quiet beating of a lonely heart, two lives were about to collide. This was not a love story that arrived gently. It rushed in, breathless and raw, like the first note of a song you did not know you needed until it started playing. They met by accident, or maybe by fate, at a small recording studio tucked between closed shops and flickering neon signs. Erav was there because he had nowhere else to be. Music had been his refuge since childhood, the one place where he could say what he never dared to speak out loud. He carried a quiet ache, born from years of almosts and not quites, from watching dreams slip just out of reach. Lena arrived for a different reason. She was running from silence, from a life that looked perfect on the outside but felt empty when the lights went out. She believed movement could save her, that if she kept going, she would not have to feel the weight she carried inside. Their first conversation was awkward and honest in a way that surprised them both. Words stumbled, then settled. Erav spoke about music as if it were a living thing, something that breathed through him. Lena listened, really listened, the way people rarely do anymore. When she spoke, her voice trembled with stories she usually kept locked away. In that small room with cables coiled like veins on the floor, something fragile and powerful began to form. As days turned into nights, they kept finding reasons to meet. Sometimes it was to work on a track, sometimes just to sit on the studio roof and watch the city pulse below. They grew closer in ways that felt natural and terrifying. Erav started writing again, melodies shaped by Lena's laughter and the sadness she tried to hide. Lena found herself slowing down, allowing moments to linger instead of rushing past them. Being together felt like standing in the calm eye of a storm. But closeness has a way of exposing what people would rather keep hidden. Erav's biggest challenge was fear. Fear of failing, fear of being seen. Fear that if he let someone truly close, they would eventually walk away. His past was filled with half-finished songs and opportunities he never took because he did not believe he deserved them. Lena's challenge was different, but just as heavy. She had learned to survive by staying distant, by never depending too much on anyone. Letting Erav in meant risking heartbreak. She was not sure she could survive again. The first crack appeared on a night that should have been perfect. Erav had been offered a chance to showcase his music, a real opportunity that could change everything. Instead of celebrating, he withdrew. Doubt crept in, whispering that he was not ready, that he would fail in front of everyone who mattered. Lena tried to encourage him, but her words felt to him like pressure. Their conversation turned sharp, then silent. Lena left the studio with tears she refused to let fall until she was alone. Distance followed, heavy and confusing. They still thought about each other constantly, replaying conversations, imagining different endings. Erav buried himself in work, convinced that solitude was safer. Lena traveled, chasing the familiar distraction of new places and fleeting connections, but nothing filled the space he had left behind. The city that once felt alive now seemed hollow for both of them. Time, however, has a way of softening truths until they can no longer be ignored. Erav realized that his fear was costing him more than failure ever could. He listened to the unfinished track they had started together, the one inspired by their first night on the roof. In its quiet spaces, he heard everything he had been running from. Lena, on the road, finally stopped long enough to face her own reflection. She understood that independence did not have to mean isolation, that strength could include choosing to stay. Their paths crossed again by chance or fate at the same studio where it all began. The air between them was tense, thick with unspoken apologies. Erav spoke first, his voice unsteady but sincere. He admitted his fear, his mistakes, and how close he had come to losing something that mattered more than his doubts. Lena listened, tears in her eyes, then told him about her own walls and how tired she was of always running. Forgiveness did not arrive all at once. It came in pieces, in shared silence and careful words. They decided to try again, not by erasing the past, but by understanding it. Arav accepted the showcase, this time with Lena by his side, not as a crutch, but as a reminder that he was not alone. Lena chose to stay to build something real instead of chasing the next escape. The night of the performance, the city seemed to hold its breath. Arav stepped onto the stage, heart pounding, hands trembling, and began to play. The song was called Closer, inspired by everything they had been through. As the melody filled the room, Lena felt every note wrap around her, familiar and new at the same time. The audience listened, captivated, but for Arav, only one person mattered. When the final note faded, the silence was followed by applause that felt like a release. Arav looked at Lena, and in that moment, all the distance they had crossed melted away. They had faced their challenges not by being perfect, but by being honest. In the end, their story was not about grand gestures or flawless love. It was about choosing courage over fear, connection over isolation, and growth over comfort. Being closer did not mean losing themselves. It meant finding strength in vulnerability and understanding that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone see you as you are. As the city lights flickered on and the night stretched ahead, Arav and Lena walked forward together, not knowing exactly where the road would lead, but trusting that whatever came next, they would face it side by side. And somewhere in the background, the echo of SXYBIT, Closer, lingered, a reminder that even in a world that constantly pulls people apart, choosing to move closer can change everything. Begins with silence, the kind that feels heavier than shouting. Days had passed since Arav and Lena last stood in the same room, yet their presence lingered everywhere. The studio still smelled faintly of coffee and rain, and the unfinished track sat open on Arav's screen like an unanswered question. Every note reminded him of her voice, her honesty, and the way she had believed in him when he could not believe in himself. He tried to convince himself that distance was necessary, that pain was easier to manage alone, but the truth pressed against his chest every night, refusing to be ignored. Lena, meanwhile, kept moving. New cities, unfamiliar streets, different faces. She told herself she was fine, that she had done this her whole life. But something was different now. The noise no longer drowned out her thoughts. In quiet hotel rooms, she replayed their conversations, the warmth in Arav's eyes when he spoke about music, the fear he tried so hard to hide. For the first time, running felt exhausting instead of freeing. She realized she missed not just him, but the version of herself she became when she was with him. Slower, more open, more real. Arav's biggest challenge grew clearer with each passing day. Fear had always shaped his choices, but now he saw its cost. He skipped calls, ignored messages, and turned down opportunities, telling himself he was protecting his heart. In reality, he was shrinking his world. One late night, as rain tapped against the studio windows, he pressed play on the track they had started together. The melody was unfinished, but the emotion was undeniable. It carried longing, regret, and hope all at once. He understood then that the song was not just about closeness, it was about courage. Lena faced her own reckoning when her journey finally stopped feeling purposeful. She stood at a train platform, watching people arrive and leave, and felt an unexpected emptiness. Movement had once been her shield, but now it felt like avoidance. She admitted something she had never allowed herself to say out loud. She was afraid of staying because staying meant building, and building meant risking loss. Arav had seen her in a way no one else had, and that terrified her, yet losing him without even trying hurt more. Their reunion did not happen dramatically. There were no grand signs or perfect timing. Lena returned to the city quietly, unsure of what she would say or whether he would even want to see her. Arav, exhausted from rehearsing alone, stepped outside the studio for air and saw her standing across the street. For a moment, neither moved. The city noise faded, leaving only the weight of everything unsaid. When they finally spoke, the words came slowly but honestly. Arav admitted he had pushed her away because he did not trust himself to be enough. Lena confessed that she had left because closeness scared her more than loneliness ever had. There was pain in their voices, but also relief. Naming their fears made them feel smaller, more manageable. Chapter 2 ends not with certainty, but with choice. They decided to face their challenges together, knowing it would not be easy. Arov chose to step forward instead of hiding, to let his music be heard even if it scared him. Lena chose to stay, to learn that stability did not mean losing herself. As they walked back into the studio side by side, the unfinished song waited for them, no longer a reminder of distance, but a promise of what could still be created if they dared to move closer again. Opens with a fragile kind of hope, the type that feels almost dangerous because it can still be broken. Arov and Lena returned to the studio together, not as they were before, but as two people aware of their fears and still willing to try. The air between them carried caution, yet beneath it pulsed a quiet excitement. They did not rush into comfort. Every smile, every shared glance felt earned, like a small victory over the distance that had once separated them. Working on the song became their language. Arov poured his uncertainty into the melody, letting the notes rise and fall like his own heartbeat. Lena listened closely, offering suggestions, sometimes with words, sometimes with silence. Music allowed them to speak without defending themselves. It revealed truths they might have softened or hidden in conversation. As the track slowly took shape, so did their understanding of each other. They were no longer chasing perfection, only honesty. But healing is never a straight path. Arav's showcase date approached, and with it came pressure. Expectations from producers, comparisons, and the fear of being judged threatened to pull him back into old habits. Lena noticed the change before he admitted it. He grew quieter, more distracted, lost in thoughts he would not share. This time, instead of leaving, Lena stayed. She challenged him gently, reminding him that fear did not mean failure, and that support did not mean weakness. Lena faced her own test as well. Staying in one place forced her to confront parts of herself she had long avoided. Without constant movement, memories surfaced, past relationships where closeness turned into control, where love came with conditions. Those scars made her hesitate whenever things felt too good. One night, overwhelmed, she nearly packed her bags again. Standing in the doorway, she realized how easy it would be to disappear and how hard it would be to live with that choice. Their strongest moment came not from romance, but from vulnerability. Lena finally shared her past without filtering it, without pretending it no longer hurt. Arov listened, not trying to fix anything, simply present. In return, he confessed his deepest fear, that success might change him or cost him the people he loved. In that exchange, trust deepened. They learned that being closer did not mean losing control, but sharing it. As the chapter moves toward its end, the night of the showcase arrives. Backstage, Arav's hands trembled, but this time he did not face it alone. Lena stood beside him, grounding him with quiet reassurance. When he stepped onto the stage, the lights were blinding, the room vast and silent. He took a breath and began to play the song they had built together. Each note carried their journey, the distance, the return, the courage to stay. Chapter 3 closes with Lena watching from the crowd, tears in her eyes, not from fear of loss, but from pride. No matter the outcome, they had already won something rare. They had chosen honesty over escape, connection over comfort. As the music filled the space, both of them understood that closeness was no longer something to fear. It was something they had earned. Begins in the quiet after the music ends, when the last note fades and the world seems to pause. The applause fills the room, loud and overwhelming, but Arav barely hears it. His eyes search for Lena in the crowd, and when he finds her, everything else dissolves. In that single moment, he understands that success is not measured by cheers or recognition, but by who is still standing with you when the sound fades. Backstage, the energy is chaotic. People offer congratulations, promises, possibilities. Arov smiles, nods, and listens, but his thoughts remain anchored to Lena. When she finally reaches him, words feel unnecessary. They embrace, not tightly, but with a certainty that comes from having weathered fear together. The challenges that once threatened to pull them apart now feel like shared ground rather than dividing lines. Yet the final test does not come from the outside world. It comes in the form of choice. Arav is offered a chance to tour, an opportunity that would take him away for months. The dream he once doubted is suddenly real, and with it comes the question he had been avoiding. Lena feels the weight of it immediately. Distance had once broken them. Could they survive it now, knowing what they risked losing? This time, they do not argue. They sit together in the empty studio long after midnight, surrounded by cables, instruments, and memories. Arav admits that he wants to go, not to escape, but to grow. Lena admits that she is afraid, but also tired of letting fear decide her life. They speak honestly, acknowledging that love does not guarantee certainty, only commitment. They decide not to promise forever, but to promise effort, trust, and truth. Days pass, and preparation replaces doubt. They make time count, filling it with ordinary moments that feel extraordinary because they are chosen. Laughter over late-night meals, quiet mornings with unfinished songs playing softly in the background. Lena continues her own work, building a life that does not revolve around waiting. Arav practices relentlessly, carrying her voice and belief with him in every note. The night before his departure, they return to the rooftop, where everything once felt possible and terrifying at the same time. The city stretches below them, alive and endless. Arav plays Closer one last time before he leaves, the final version complete. The song no longer sounds uncertain. It carries resilience, trust, and love that has learned to breathe. Chapter 4 ends not with goodbye, but with understanding. As the sun begins to rise, they stand side by side, knowing distance may test them again, but also knowing they are no longer the same people who once ran from closeness. They have learned that love is not about holding on too tightly or keeping walls too high. It is about choosing each other again and again, even when the path forward is unclear. And as Arav walks toward his future and Lena turns toward hers, the space between them does not feel empty. It feels full of everything they have built. In that fullness, they realize the true meaning of being closer is not about proximity, but about connection that endures, no matter how far the road stretches ahead.